Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in. ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha. I head up brand awareness at Reveal. This week we are broadcasting live from Legalweek 2024 in New York City. On each episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live, I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. Our guests for this session are Susan Wortzman and Adam Wells. They are both with the law firm of McCarthy, Tétrault, but more specifically in the group MT3. Susan is a partner at the firm. Adams is Senior Vice President of Strategy. Susan, Adam, welcome.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George. Good to see you as well. Well, we were chatting ahead of time, and you were telling me that you are seeing the world we live in change dramatically. What's happening?
Well, we always have the usual litigation cases, and then we get the competition work, the usual stuff that comes in the door. But what's really different for us right now is the number of investigations that we're working on, ranging from, I think, whistleblower investigations, corruption investigations, harassment investigations, all kinds of workplace investigations, some driven by regulators, many internally. So it's just a very different
So the number
compass.
of investigations has amped way up.
Yeah.
What else is going on?
Well, Adam and I keep struggling on the budget side because data volumes are going crazy. I always thought I knew how big someone's mailbox would be and like just general sizes of data. And Adam, maybe you want to talk, we just did some analysis so that we could estimate properly, and the volumes, even if we know we've got 10 custodians we're collecting from, we're seeing something really different.
Yeah, I mean, most clients will tell you how difficult it can be on our side to estimate volumes and give an accurate budget. And that's only sort of compounded, I would say, in the last probably 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, where because of the volume of information we're working with, we're constantly surprised at how much is coming through the door, and then being able to budget for it has become sort of that much trickier. So we're constantly having to measure and remeasure and make sure that we know sort of what the up-to-date metrics are so that we can prepare an accurate budget. And then using the tools that we have to understand and be able to educate our clients, where we're going to be able to potentially shave costs or, just keep to the budget.
I think the other piece that's really key in what we're doing and what we're seeing is we're looking now more on these investigations than we have before for the proverbial needle in the haystack. And that's really tough. And so this is where AI models are coming in and kicking in and really helping us. And it's great that we have all the out-of-the-box AI models that Reveal's created and that we can build, but the ones we're building ourselves are the ones that are most effective in the tools that we're working with to help us find what we're looking for. It's pretty remarkable how successful they've been.
So a two-part question. We'll start with the first part. What types of AI models are you building to help tackle these challenges you're now facing with the huge growth in volume?
So privilege is one, and it's the obvious one, but we've had a few productions that are outgoing productions where we have just made decisions in second requests. We call them SIRS in Canada, but second requests, where we just are producing all the records. We're building a model to predict what's responsive, and we're producing everything. and then accept what's privileged. And that's where we've had huge success. So we do what you normally do, and we get this massive list of search terms because that's what lawyers like to do. And they want to search all the privileged terms that they've ever come up with, all the lawyer names and all the domain names. And we can have thousands of things on the list. We'll search those things and review those records. But then we've also separately built a privilege model. And when we run that against the remaining data, we keep finding more privilege. We keep finding more privilege. And so like that's amazing to do those. And we're using them we're building them ourselves because we will only use that client's data to build the privilege model. So we're not taking a generic privilege model. Right. We're doing them individually for each client.
It's a bespoke model.
It's a bespoke model for every client.
Great word for it.
Yeah. What privilege models? What other types of models are you finding effective for this?
For corruption, for one I can't talk about, like one where we just built a very specific model to identify records that for a problem a client was having. Another one we built was we were looking for any documents related to discretionary trusts. So you'd never think about something like that. You'd never have an out-of-the-box model, but we had a client with tens and tens of thousands of records that was looking for evidence that the trusts were actually discretionary. So we built a model for that. So it's just whatever sort of problem comes our way with data, we'll say, well, we'll give it a try.
Second part of the question then, what is it like when you build the models? What process do you go through? How do you do this?
We want to start with both. We want to start with responsive and non-responsive records. So we'll run some searches, we'll do some review, and then once we have that critical mass of responsive, not responsive records, we'll just start reviewing and running the model and improving it until we see it stabilize. It's not just stable, but it's stable and it's accurate. So it's really about testing the model. It's just, and I think for us, it's that combination of having lawyers do that review in conjunction with running the technology all the time. Like we don't just run a model and say, okay, it worked, or have humans do review. We really want to merge those two.
I have heard over the years some variation, and it could be applied to models, but I've heard it in other contexts of, we don't have time to do that. We need to start looking at the documents now. Do you run up against that with colleagues, with clients, with anybody?
Yeah, we're running up against that right now in an investigation that we're working on. And the lawyers are just, there's three legal teams working on it. One of the legal teams says, we just want to start doing the review. We just want to get in and we want to run search terms. And I've suggested to them that there's a better way of doing it. But I don't fuss about it anymore. If they would want to get in and run searches and do the document and look at documents really quickly, I think that's great. And I will take the results of what they've reviewed though, and I will use those results to build a model. And then I will present the model to them and say, here's what else you need to look at. So you can't really, the practices of lawyers are going to start changing, but they're going to change when they see how well the model works. Not if Susan Wortzman tells them they can't start the review right away.
And are you seeing that happening, that type of reaction?
Yeah, it's really interesting. On one of the matters we're working on right now, those lawyers were going to give me search terms and more search terms and have review ongoing. And we built a privilege model, and I could see how happy they were and astounded they were that they actually couldn't believe we found privileged records that all of our review missed, So, I think that it's the results really that we're starting to see a really positive reaction.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it lends itself to a conversation that you're having much more and sort of much earlier on about how you're budgeting and staffing on these matters, right? And so it is helpful to let the lawyers get an early look at the data and help understand what's there. And Susan and I are constantly talking about, okay, what's the team going to look like for this matter? What are we going to need? And It may be, tens of millions of records, but we know through our process and how we iterate that we're not going to need to staff, 100 lawyers to do the review. We know that we can pare down the review set in a meaningful way. And so it's just constantly looking at how that's going to impact the budget and then the structure of the business as well.
That's another thing that I really got wrong recently was we were starting a review project, and I threw a huge team on it because it was urgent and there was nothing to review because the model worked really, really well and there was nothing to find in the investigation. So all of a sudden it was like, it's okay, there's nothing to do. You guys can go move on and work on something else.
So are you finding when the models work well that instead of following up the work on the model with a review, you're following it up with QA, quality assurance, and testing the results?
Yeah, we're doing validation samples all the time. So we're looking at the different categories of records, even when we're doing the records like the Excel spreadsheets and everything that are outside of it. We validate all of that. But yeah, we're letting the models work, and then we're doing a lot of our quality assurance process and sampling to validate that the model actually did what we wanted it to do, so that we have a very high standard of what is acceptable to us before we'll stop going back and doing more review.
And I think it changes meaningfully as well the way our lawyers are working and doing their job, right? So it's in these instances, it's much less of managing a review team and much more of managing the process and doing the QC checks, making sure the process worked right, that you found what you needed to find, and you're sampling for other potential relevant records, right? So it's a little bit less of a, you're just managing a team. And so it opens up their world too in terms of what they're doing.
We have project managers now that are spending a lot of time documenting our process and documenting every step that we took, so that we can actually walk a regulator through it. We can walk our client through it and explain, this is everything that we've done. We're confident that you've got the results you're looking for.
I would imagine that also means that for the next project, the next engagement, you can give them a much better idea of what the process is going to look like.
Yeah, we're learning all the time, too, what works best, what's fastest and most effective and efficient. So
we've got just a couple minutes left. I would be remiss if I didn't tie it up with a question about cost, because you started by saying volumes of data have exploded. Normally, that would mean cost of dealing with that volume of data have exploded as well. Is that what you're experiencing, or something different?
We are, and the key to that is really managing the data well, so that we can get data offline as quickly as we can. Just working with, sometimes just pulling out the extracted text and loading the extracted text, so we have smaller volumes, and using that to build the models. So we're having to be more effective in the way that we approach the data. And we used to, I don't know, I guess when data volumes were smaller, we would keep everything online and in the review workspace. And now we don't want to, because the hosting is expensive, and processing. We're just looking at different cost models for clients. So we're doing a lot more fixed fees. And so we're just sort of saying, up to this amount of data, this is your fixed fee, and giving them a lot more comfort that way.
Any words of wisdom for folks who want to try to do the types of things you've been doing?
I think you need to have a real discipline around what you're doing. So, you get the legal input, and you've got the technical piece that you're doing, but you need to build that entire team and have the real process around it. To pull all of that together, I think, is the challenge. And so I would say be really diligent about that, documenting this whole process, because it's tricky, and you can think you're getting great results and be missing something. And so we're always just be thinking, like, we're trying to think 10 steps ahead of where we're going.
I would say too, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, right? Like, it can be such a black box. All the technology and the processes that you're using, invite people into the process and sort of let them see what it looks like. Let experts in to see the data, let the lawyers in to see the data. You like to invite clients in at times to look at the data alongside you as you're actually running searches and looking at clusters and things, right? And so don't be afraid of that, and invite more eyeballs in. It'll help the process for sure.
Adam, Susan, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's a very busy week to chat with us. Susan is a partner, and Adam is, wait a minute.
Senior VP.
Senior VP of Strategy and MT3. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.